when some of you were little, entitled The Elements of Metaphysics by Professor A.E. Taylor. And I'm going to paraphrase him here, and probably badly. But he talks about metaphysics in terms of reality, and what he says basically is that reality is a single systematic whole. The nature of its constituent parts is only comprehensible vis-a-vis the entire system. As such, each of its individual appearances or expressions is viewed as the whole in itself. Let me see if I can clarify that, because I clarified him, now let me clarify me. Okay. Basically, this is the teaching of all metaphysical sects, okay? God is a unified whole. Therefore, everything in existence can only be understood in terms of the microcosm within the macrocosm. You follow me on that, okay? Each of us is a divine phenomenon, and our true essence is only intelligible within the context of the divine itself. We can only understand ourselves in terms of God. Why didn't I just say that in the first place? Okay. We can only understand ourselves in terms of understanding God, because we are God. Anytime we look at another person, we are looking at God. And here's the thing. We're not looking at part of God. As much as I would love to say, I'm the brain of God, and George is the ear, and Carol is the foot, well, we don't get to do that, right? You can't divide God up that way. When we look at anyone, including ourselves, we are not only viewing God, we are viewing all of God. What we see is the allness of divine spirit. How does this relate to our vision? Well, it means, first of all, that we don't have to go very far to find the divine stuff that gave us the vision in the first place and that gives us the power to make it so. The best way I know to clarify this idea is in terms of Eric Butterworth in The Universe is Calling, where he writes that every point in space contains the entirety of divine spirit. So, divine mind is present in its wholeness at every point in space at all times. There is not a moment or a place we can look that all of God is not present. He also says that we may think we're getting an idea out of divine mind, when in actuality, every idea we have already contains within it the entirety of divine mind. That's a direct quote from Butterworth. Let me give you a direct quote from me. We're not taking anything out of infinite intelligence. Rather, the entirety of infinite intelligence is already resident in our idea. We cannot extract anything from spirit, but everything we conceive of is infused with the allness of spirit. So God is right where we are. Not some of God or part of God or as much as would fit into us, whatever we could contain. All of God is present right where we are at all times. We don't have to go anywhere. What we have to do is open our eyes, ignite our awareness, and know. How many of you are practiced metaphysicians? How many of you are new, or newish? Glenn, you're not new. Knowing for us is not a passive undertaking. To the contrary, it involves action on our part. Knowing involves action. Being consciously engaged in the activity of knowing takes many forms. One of those is affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment. In some religions, before you can pray effectively, you have to get right with God. How many of you come from a background where that was the case? You had to get right with God before God would listen to your prayers. That's ridiculous. I have heard people say that from the dawn of humankind, we have been in rebellion against our Creator. I'm sorry, that's just crazy. It is not possible because there is no conflict in God. It's not possible for us to be in rebellion with our Creator. If we're in rebellion with anything, it's the truth of ourselves. And the answer to that conflict lies within ourselves. For us, as metaphysicians, getting right with God simply means getting right with the truth of ourselves. And what is that? We are divine. It's that simple. Okay. So prayer is one way that we actively know. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote that prayer is the contemplation of the facts of life from the highest point of view. In our case, the highest point of view is the perspective of our vision. It doesn't get any higher than that. We start at the top. Okay? We approach prayer from the standpoint of completion because we know our good is already complete, it's already done, it's already so in the mind of God. Affirmative prayer is the tool we use to allow our vision to take form in our experience. Now, I'm sorry to say that today's lecture doesn't include any lessons in how to do treatment or affirmative prayer or any of the steps because we don't have time for that. But those of you who are members of CSL Fremont, I know that you are students. You are devoted students. Everybody here takes classes. We're a bunch of bookworms and nerds. We love to read and we love to study and we love to take classes, don't we? So we're somewhat familiar with prayer. You're familiar with the steps of spiritual mind treatment, as we call it. But if anyone wants to brush up on affirmative prayer, I highly recommend 3 books in particular. One is Treat Yourself to Life by Raymond Charles Barker. Everybody have that one on your shelf? Okay, take it back off, read it again. Can We Talk to God by Ernest Holmes, especially the chapter entitled Effective Prayer. That is the best thing I have ever read about prayer. It is fantastic. It used to be a small book unto itself. Now it's a chapter. Reverend Barbara happens to have a copy right there, and we have it in the bookstore. And a book I'm rereading right now because we're doing it in Science of Mind 300, which is The Universe is Calling by Eric Butterworth. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, in addition to affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, metaphysicians use a variety of techniques. One of those is visioning. And I have to confess that up until recently, I didn't even think about visioning because I didn't value it. I thought it was a bunch of new age, woo-woo kind of nonsense. Seriously. It's like, oh, yeah, that's for people who aren't smart and don't know what they're doing and don't know how to pray appropriately. Besides, I live with Mr. Anti-Woo-Woo. As you know, he doesn't believe in psychics or feng shui or astrology, even though some of our dearest friends are psychics and our house is totally feng shuied, unbeknownst to him. And I happen to love astrology. Maybe because I'm a Virgo, and Virgos are so amazingly interesting. Aren't we? I will sometimes read my horoscope, and I think somebody is spying on me. This happened just the other day. I was in the salon, and I had my hair highlighted in case anybody's wondering what happened with all this. So I don't sit around and read magazines very often, but my stylist stuck me under the dryer with foil on my head, and she handed me a magazine to entertain me so I wouldn't die of boredom, I suppose. So I'm reading Vogue, the April issue. You can check me. And I get to the horoscope part, and I read it, and it says,